Why Penghu? Because this video is a special documentary about Taiwan history during the Japanese colonial era. And as we know, Taiwan was ceded to Japan in 1895. Japan needed a home base that was strategic, a place where they could have points of entry to the rest of Taiwan, where they could refuel their coal-fired ships. Where was that place? Penghu. So right now we're in the bunker of Longmen, and this is where Japanese had a number of tunnels, machine guns, cannons, and they were going to protect the shore from any foreign outsiders who were trying to come into Taiwan. Let's get this video started by visiting Tainan and Kaohsiung, and then we'll come back to Penghu. So if you look geographically, we're right in the middle of Taiwan. And this area is so rich in Japanese like symbols and relics of the past. And then in Tainan, the Japanese government offices were also here. So they're quite stunning, they're quite beautiful. Most have been converted to museums now, but they're absolutely beautiful, and you can see the symbols there because again, red brick, like with perfect craftsmanship. And also you'll see usually some palm trees. Other symbols that you will see that you know are notably put here by Japan during the Japanese era are sports fields. Sports fields? Yes, so the Japanese brought baseball to Taiwan. So whenever you see a baseball diamond, you know it was probably put there by the Japanese, and now baseball is the most popular sport in Taiwan. Basketball might argue that, but definitely the most established professional sports league in Taiwan is baseball. I'm standing here in Tainan, and there's been talk about scraping this site for development and relocating the stadium to a new stadium outside the city. I hope they don't do it, because coming to a game here is quite special. It's like nostalgia. And I hope they preserve this historic part of history in the city of Tainan, and everyone continues to enjoy baseball right here.
欢迎来到台南市立棒球场，打棒球了，打棒球吧。
So that's right, sports fields, baseball was imported by Japan, and it's quite popular in Taiwan. But this little area, Snail Alley, is so cool to explore. There's these amazing like coffee houses, and some of these coffee houses are old Japanese buildings. So in Tainan, even getting a cup of coffee is a cool experience. And again, it's going to be a blast right out of the Japanese past. We're in like an old Japanese house right now, converted into a coffee house. Super cool. And nothing better to go with that delicious coffee than one of my favorite little treats I love when I'm in Japan. These little like cakes, they're called dorayaki. And there's a great little dorayaki shop right here in Snail Alley. Other notable symbols of Japanese architecture in Tainan is the train station. So when people tell you that there's Japanese architecture here, they usually mention the train station. Right now it's going through a rehab, but there's a cute little Japanese train station that's well preserved just a little south of here called Baoan, and I highly recommend it. It's just super cool. It's really popular with tourists. You'll see people take a lot of selfies in front of it. Other symbols include the school system. So the Japanese made it a requirement for the youth to attend school, and education was a priority. So you'll see the schools in Tainan, especially the universities and the high schools and the elementary schools. Those were built by Japan. So right up here is that dorayaki, a little cake spot that I love that reminds me so much of being in Japan. So we're going to stop in and grab a couple treats. And I'll tell you, when you're in Tainan, you're going to be eating treats because there's so many of them and they're just so good. And this in particular is probably one of my favorite treats in all of Taiwan. So let's grab 1, 2, or maybe even 3 or 4. So these are our friendly shopkeepers, and they make the best dorayaki. Just as good, if not better, than Japan. So I'm going to start with matcha and red bean. The only problem with these dorayakis is I can't stop eating them. So I'm on the second one. I could probably eat 6 of them, and they're so delicious. Our next stop is going to be Kaohsiung. So instead of going back to Penghu, we're gonna hop down to Kaohsiung because it's also rich in Japanese history. Although it was hit a lot harder by the US during World War II. So much of it was bombed. You're not gonna see as many Japanese buildings still standing like you are gonna see in Tainan. Welcome to Kaohsiung as we continue to explore Taiwan's history during the Japanese colonial era. And at the moment, we're at the Fengshan Radio Telecommunications Center used by the Navy during the war. What we are familiar with when we visit Kaohsiung is Martial Arts Center. So the Martial Arts Center is beautiful, and if you've been to Kaohsiung, you know just how beautiful it is. It was set up by the Japanese to train the police forces, and then today you see it being used for like children. They go and train, even adults, but it's just a beautiful building inside and outside. And then the National History Museum, you can't help but miss it because it has this odd green color. Why? That's camouflage. So during the war, they were trying to not make it a target, and it has that kind of camouflage green look to it. Why don't we see more Japanese landmarks in Kaohsiung? Let's take a break and head to one of the local historic neighborhoods. But this area of Kaohsiung is super important. So it's Hamashan, and behind me is the Hamashan restoration project. So this area where I'm standing, let me show you some drone footage. If we go up, you can see the port, you can see the railway, you can see the importance strategically to the Japanese. So you had a railway here, you had all the port and the big ships going back to Japan. And this area became the most modern really in Taiwan. So it had electric, sewer, and it was really developed. But then what happened in World War II? The US came in and devastated this area. They bombed the heck out of it. A couple of the surviving buildings, probably by no coincidence, were a couple banks. So you can take a look at these 2 banks here. They survived, and one is redone, restored really nicely now and is a restaurant. And you can see though, this agency, Hamashan Restoration Project, they're doing their best to preserve the old buildings because there's been talk of developers to take them down and redevelop. So I'm gonna put the link to this project in the notes to this video so we can support projects that are preserving and restoring this part of Taiwan's history. This Fengshan Radio Center was significant because this is one of the broadcast points when the emperor announced the defeat in World War II, when Japanese was defeated. One of the broadcast points was right here, but this is where the Navy conducted all their telecommunications. But it has a really dark history, where in 1949, some other things occurred here. And if you go over to the building just behind us, it gets a little bit strange and eerie when you walk in there. Yeah, I don't think good things happened in this room. It almost feels like a torture chamber. And I'm sure it was. And it's a weird feeling. It's so strange. All the padding on the walls, and then, the windows are barred up. but you just get a feeling a lot of bad things happen in this room. It's just eerie seeing the padding on the walls, and who knows exactly what went on in here, but there are some reports that some pretty bad things. And it's even stranger that those old like mattresses are still pinned to the walls. You know, it's just an eerie thing. You would think maybe over time those would have disappeared. And now you have this warehouse where you look around, and I wouldn't be surprised if one day down the road, maybe 5 or 10 years, if Kaohsiung doesn't make this area like a park or a creative park. I mean, this warehouse could be a great creative space. It could be food. It could be all kinds of great things that we've seen other cities do. But let's keep on kind of taking you around. I'm going to give you a little tour of this radio tower. Oh, my man. How are you two? So beautiful, the two of you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Meme. So, like I was saying in the warehouse, this is like the perfect place for like artistic, creative photo shoots. And here we are. There's a photo shoot going on, and we got some locals from Kaohsiung here. Schweiger. Meme. Jan. Nice to see you guys. And bye from until next time. When we come back to Kaohsiung. See you. That's right, in Kaohsiung, that old Japanese radio broadcast center. After the Japanese left, or were made to leave, it was turned into a site of interrogation by the KMT, and it's actually labeled a site of injustice now because of the awful things that went on there. So right now, I'm standing in what used to be Japanese military housing in Penghu, and you can see the strategic location here. So the old Japanese coal-fired ships would dock just a few feet away, and then this is where the housing was. So Penghu is very strategic. Let's look at the map for a moment, and you can see it was very strategic for where Japan would enter Taiwan. So at this site where I'm standing, you see a lot going on here. You see a mix of old and new homes. Some are original, literally almost ready to fall over. And then some are being preserved, and then some are being like newly constructed at the sites where the old houses were. So you see like a guy drilling away at the old original Japanese red brick, but all around him is a new home. So what they're trying to do at this site is similar to what you see in, say, Chiayi at Hinoki Village. So you'll see what this village they're building right now is going to be kind of modeled after. So let's hop over to Hinoki Village in Chiayi. Chiayi is significant because it was kind of like the hub for sugar, for hinoki, for wood. A lot of kind of resources were shipped out of here. So just up the road, you'll see a very big, well-preserved sugar factory. It's quite beautiful. I mean, you can see how they designed it with a park and some beautiful architecture. Now a lot of those buildings are being like converted to restaurants or cafes. But let's take a little look around on Chiayi. Just behind us we have the old railway park for Alishan. So that's where they would get the wood and then train it right down here to Chiayi. We even have an old Japanese prison in Chiayi. That's right. So in the heart of Chiayi, there's an old historic Japanese prison. I'm walking through one of the hallways that has the cells. And this whole building and the buildings next to it are so interesting. It reminds me a little bit, if you ever visit, say, Alcatraz, kind of that interesting, just a time capsule from that era in history. So when the Japanese built this in the 1930s, you can see they use some of the same design that you see in some of the cities. Like you'll see palm trees, there's a garden, basketball court, so there's some sports playing. There's a little dentist's office. You can see the cells here, so we'll walk into one of these. Well, not too much space in here. I mean, just enough to sleep. There's the bathroom. Okay, that's it for the prison. Let's head back to Hakone Village. One of the more memorable things about the prison is the scent of hinoki wood. I mean, you can really smell it when you come right in. So here we are at Hinoki Village. Other than that, it's been a great place to take pictures. So you see a lot of selfies, a lot of good photos going on around here. It's also really like well-preserved old like homes. They've been turned into shops and restaurants. And yeah, so Chiayi was like a hub. So you had the hinoki wood coming in from Alishan Mountain. You have sugar factories. So not very far from here, you have a really well-preserved old sugar factory with beautiful architecture, and the buildings being turned into, say, restaurants or cafes. You have other symbols like the one we find in Tainan, the old baseball park. You have an old baseball park here also built in the 1930s. So they've done a sort of a renovation on it. It's not as preserved as the stadium in Tainan, but it's still really cool to see an old baseball park from the Japanese era right here in Chiayi. It's great to see the local municipalities like Chiayi committed to doing these type of projects where they rehab and they maybe bring in shops and restaurants. But you can see it pays dividends because even this spot on a totally off day, it's not a holiday, it's quite busy with tourism. And as Taiwan opens back up for travel, this is a really popular destination for Japanese and tourists from all over the world alike. Okay, that's it from Chiayi. Let's take it back to Pangu. When in Chiayi, Hinoki Village is a must visit. When in Pangu, this, where I'm standing, is also a must visit. And just a reminder, this video is one in a two-part series. Just a quick reminder, this is a two-part video series, and part number 1 discusses the Wushe, Mudan, and Trapani incidents. So if you haven't seen that first, please, at the end of this video that you're watching on Taiwan history during the Japanese colonial era, please take a look at part 1. Now, let's head back to Pangu. And when talking about history, there's always going to be points of discussion. So if you have more informed information than what I am sharing, please comment below and let's open up the dialogue and have a good conversation. Now, it's on to the next stop. Let's go to Taichung. Welcome to Taichung, everyone. I'm standing at Taichung Park. The location is the Lake Heart Pavilion, and this park has a significant history when you look at the Japanese colonial era. So it was developed in the early 1900s. This is the location when they completed the railway system around 1908. They did the grand ceremony right here. But I think it's important to kind of acknowledge the Japanese, how advanced they were in regard to urban planning and urban designing. And you'll see these common symbols throughout some of the cities in Taiwan that are recognizably Japanese planning. For example, these beautiful parks. You see them across Taiwan, and I like this one in particular. But you see the features. It's beautiful use of water, beautiful use of trees and shading, the grass, notably the palm trees. And it's really conducive to creating community. So you see people out enjoying, playing music, visiting with family. You see couples sitting on the grass. You see people in the water, paddling and enjoying the koi, the fish in the water, and children are having fun. So the Japanese were quite advanced in their use of, say, creating public spaces. But you also see the use of wide boulevards, often tree-lined, often with palm trees. You see that in Taichung. Also recognizable is the train station. So the Japanese were responsible for the railways, developing the railway in Taiwan. So you see in Taichung this beautiful old historic Taichung rail station. Old sports fields and courts, so tennis courts and baseball fields. So Taichung has a historic baseball field just like we saw in Chiayi in Tainan. The professional team, they built a new one since then, so they play in a newer stadium outside the city that was built right around 2006. You also see excellent use of the waterway in Taichung. It is a community space. Back during the Japanese era, they referred to Taichung as the Kyoto of Formosa for its peacefulness and calmness. Now, back then it was a smaller city, around 50,000 people. Since then, it's grown quite large. It's the second largest city in Taiwan. It doesn't probably still have that peaceful calmness feeling that the Japanese felt because of the size, but you can still find these beautiful pockets like this park that are quite peaceful, quite calm, and just purely enjoyable. Here in Taichung, they even have a really cool Japanese bookstore. Japanese bookstore, a lot of books in Japanese. I'm liking this one right here. All things matcha, and this looks so good. So a question for those of you watching, we have 2 cities left. Should we go up to Taipei? Should we hop over to Hualien? Or should we go back to Penghu for a minute? I think we're gonna go straight up to Taipei. Here we are in Taipei. So that opening scene was Renai Boulevard, lined with palm trees. It's the main thoroughfare through Taipei. And who is responsible for that design? The Japanese. So sometimes the Japanese remnants and relics from the Japanese colonial era in Taiwan are hiding right before your eyes. So in regard to urban planning and urban design, like Taichung, you'll see some of the same elements here in Taipei. And like Taichung, you'll see a lot of parks. So we're gonna leave this busier street, which is a little bit noisy. We're gonna head to a park and continue to explore Japanese colonial era in Taiwan from a park. Okay, better. A little more quiet here. Here I am at Linsen Park in the heart of Taipei. And behind me, 2 torii. Why? There used to be a Shinto shrine where you see this park. More on that in a minute. Now, when you look around Taipei, it was supposed to be kind of this flagship city for the Japanese. A real trophy, in a sense, how they could establish a colony. And if you look at the buildings, the hospital, the presidential palace, what is now a museum, these are all constructed by the Japanese, and they're absolutely beautiful architecture. And what do you call these beautiful buildings? They're called soldiers in civilian clothes. So it's almost like a form of unspoken persuasion or a form of Japanization. So back to Linsen Park. Behind me, you see these two torii. There used to be a Shinto shrine right there, and there used to be over 200 beautiful Shinto shrines in Taiwan. But when the KMT came in, they tore them all down. And the most well-preserved Shinto shrine is just a few minutes from Taipei. So Taipei almost requires a full episode or really 2 or 3 videos to take a deep dive and look at the Taiwanese history in regard to the Japanese colonial era. So if that's something that interests you, please comment below. I can't make any promises, but maybe I'll make a video or 2 that talks about exclusively Taipei and the Japanese colonial era. For now, let's hop on over to Taoyuan. It's just a few minutes away, and take a look at the most well-preserved Shinto shrine in Taiwan, and then we'll head over to Penghu. There was once over 100 Shinto shrines throughout Taiwan. Now there's only like a handful. And this is the most well-preserved one. And it's quite amazing, very beautiful. Let's take a look around. Taipei and Taichung have so much Japanese influence in the architecture. If you look at the urban planning or urban design, and if you look for it, you see it everywhere. So right now I'm walking in the residence of the old governor during the Japanese era. So Penghu back then was called Hokucho, and the Japanese governor lived here in 1935 and on. So as you watch this video and we go on this journey through Taiwan and look at the history during the Japanese era, what are some of your favorite Japanese landmarks, if you have some? And if you have any questions about this documentary, you can reach out to me directly. You can leave a comment here on YouTube, or you can find my contact information on YouTube and reach out to me directly. We're going to go from this kind of government post during the Japanese era to another government post. We're going to hop over to Hualien, and let's go check out Pine Garden. So we go from one government outpost in Penghu to this one in Hualien. I'm standing in Pine Garden. This is probably one of my favorite Japanese landmarks in all of Taiwan, but it's what I think is underrated. People don't talk about it much, but it has a fascinating history because this is where many Japanese kamikaze pilots would take their final sip of Japanese wine before they would go on their mission the next day. And as we saw in our previous 6 stops, there's so much Japanese architecture and culture in Taiwanese history, but I think sometimes Hualien is overlooked. There's a lot of attention paid to the cities on the west coast and Taipei, but if you look around Hualien, there's some really popular tourist sites like Jian, the Shinto Shrine. It's like this mini Shinto shrine that the immigrants of Japan would frequent to make them feel less homesick. And as you go around the radius here at Pine Garden, it's just fortified with old Japanese architecture and buildings and relics of the Japanese occupation of Taiwan. You can't help but see it. You go over here, not too far, there's an old Japanese wine distillery where they would make the Japanese wine. And then just subtle things like in the urban planning, you go down here just a few feet to the waterway, and it has that feeling like you're in Japan. But Pine Garden's definitely one of my favorite because you think about the historic World War II and how the kamikaze pilots were here. And this is where they have the last sip of Japanese wine before they would go on their mission. And you could even go down here and there's a bomb shelter That's right, a bomb shelter. So check this out. So we're standing in the bomb shelter, and the Japanese built this to protect themselves from air raids, and it's really cool. So there is so much to Hualien that I'm going to save a short episode walking around Hualien, walking around this neighborhood. I'm going to show you around a little bit more, and that video will come after this documentary. Thank you everyone for going on this tour across Taiwan with me as we visited 7 cities and explored Taiwan history during the Japanese colonial era. If you're wondering about some of the sites I visited in this video, they're all going to be listed in the description. So you're going to see links to Google Maps and all their names listed right there. And I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite landmarks in Japanese architecture that's in Taiwan that maybe wasn't featured in this video? Please, if you enjoyed the video, tap like, hit subscribe, because I will be sharing 3 or 4 more videos that take a closer look at some of the cities that were featured in this video. So if you subscribe, you're going to get those notifications. Until next time, I'm Philip James.